so the particles don't go into the second event. And alternatively, we can actually change it so that it's always true. So you can see immediately as the particles are born, this test becomes true immediately and they get passed into the second event. So you've got some option there with tests. If you're diagnosing the way a particle flow is working, and you don't want to use the test in an interactive manner, you don't want it to test each particle for its age, you just want it to be true all the time, you can click on the left hand side of the test icon, and the left hand side will change it to green. And as I said, if you click on the right hand side, it'll change it to red. So it's always false, and the particles won't be sent out through that particular test. So you can see you have a lot of flexibility with activating and deactivating operators, and also with activating and deactivating events. And there are also tools here where you can actually turn off all. So we'll turn on all. We've turned everything back on. We'll come to that later. You've got another tool for in the menu for turning off all, so you can turn off everything. So we'll turn everything back on again, and we're back to where we started. So there you go. That's event and operator and test activation and deactivation. Something which is very useful is to rename elements. Now if I hold over this event here, if I want this event to represent a particular effect, event 2 may not be a very useful name for me, so I can right click and I can say rename this event, and now I could give it a name. Let's say it was a rain effect, so we could actually call it rain. There you go, we've renamed the event. Now you can do the same thing with operators. Click on an operator, right click, and you've got a rename option again, and you could do the same thing. So in this case we'll make it descriptive. We'll call it speed slower. There we go. So now we've renamed this operator. This is a very useful thing to do, because generally it makes it easier pardon me, for both you to understand and for other people to understand when they come to a flow at a later date. If you're working in a production environment, you may not necessarily be the person that ends up rendering your particular flow, or you may have to pass on the flow to somebody else. And when you do so, it makes a lot of sense to actually rename your events so they represent exactly what they do. If you have an event that's specifically set up to kill particles, why not call the event kill particles? You can do give very literal names to your events and your operators, and that's a very useful habit to get into. Now, quite an interesting feature of particle flow is copying and instancing events and operators, and particle flow offers quite a complex and sophisticated system for doing so. Let me demonstrate this. I'll click on event here, I'll right click on it, and I'll copy it. There you go. Now if I click anywhere in the viewport, I can paste that event, so I'm going to do so now, and you can see it's created a second event, and this one is called event 2 because the event 2 name became free for use after I renamed this event to rain. And you can see it's also created all of the operators in exactly the same with the same values as we had set in this version here. So that's quite useful. We can very quickly make copies of events and use them as the basis for new events. So there you go. We could now take this test here and just wire it in here instead. Actually we can't, because we've got a birth operator in there, and you can't wire into an event with a birth operator in it, which is quite an important thing to remember. So we'll just get rid of that birth operator and try that again. And there you go, we've wired into it. Now that isn't necessarily going to make any sense when we look at the particles in the viewport, so I'm just going to wire it back to this rain event here. So I'll just get rid of that by selecting it all and pressing delete. Now a second way of copying is to use the shift key, which is pretty much the same workflow as you have in the Max viewport. If I hold on the shift key, if I select this event and hold it down, you can see it's producing a little plus next to our cursor. And that means that if we select something and then drag it and drop it now, it'll actually create either a copy of it or an instance based on our choice. So let's try doing that. And as I said, we now have a choice, and we can either copy it or instance it. So let's just copy it for now. And as you can see, that's exactly the same as the copy and paste option. We've ended up with exactly the same result. We've got a copy called event 2. So I'm just going to select that and delete that again. Now this time let's do it, and let's say let's make an instance. And you can see what it's done now is it's created a new event, and it's created an instance of each operator inside the new event. Now you should make note of this. The event itself is not an instance, so this is not an instance of this event. If you change the name of it, it'll have a unique name and so forth. It's completely unique. You can't make an instance of an event, but you can make instances of the operators within it. So in a way that was a little bit deceptive. We weren't instancing the event, we were copying the event, and then we were instancing all the operators within it. So you can see when it did so, it changed the text on the operators to italic, and that means that these operators are instanced. And you can see that as I'm selecting them, it's also highlighting the operators in the original event. So this indicates that the two events are using exactly the same operators. They're linked and they're instances just like every other instance in Max. So if I change a value here, let's change the amount to 150. Press return, you can see it's changed to 150 here and it's changed to 150 there. So that's quite useful. You know, you can instance an event, and as I said, it'll just make a copy of the event and then instance everything within it. That's quite a quick shortcut as well to, you know, getting an instance setup going on. Now we can do the same thing. I'm not going to use shift this time. I'm going to copy the event and I'm going to paste instance, and that does the same thing. So you can see you've always got the option of doing your pasting and your copying using shift and drag, or you can do it using the right menu option. It's up to you really. Now what happens when we do the same thing with just an operator? We'll just select this operator and copy it, go into the view, and I'll paste it. And you can see what it's done is what you might expect. It's created a new event for the operator to sit within, because remember, you know, operators can't exist outside of events. And it's created a copy of that operator that we copied, and it's given it a logical name. And it's also put a display operator into the event, which, as I said earlier, is the default behavior. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this event, and I'm going to get this speed operator, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to select this operator, and I'm going to say insert. Sorry, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually paste instance, and what it'll do is it'll paste an instance of this operator directly after the selection that we have in the event. So you can see by copying and selecting and doing things in different ways, you can actually get different behaviors in the way you copy and instance objects. You can do, again, the same thing with shift. If I hold down shift, you can see it's produced a little plus sign next to the cursor. And now I'm going to drag this speed operator from here into here. And you can see it's given us the option again. Do we want to copy it, or do we want to instance it? And in this case, again, I'm going to instance it. So I'll leave it on instance and press OK. And you can see it's created an instance of that operator. I'll delete that again. I'll do it again. Drag it in here, do a red line. That replaces that operator, and it replaces it with an instance of this operator. I'll OK that, and you can see it's done that. So you can see particle flow is very flexible in the way you can copy and instance objects. Okay, we'll just get rid of this event here. Another feature that is very useful in particle flow is working with comments. You can make comments on events, and you can also make comments on individual operators. So if we select this event here and we want to make a comment, we go down to the comment option, click on comment, and now you've got a little window in which you can type some comments into. To make things maybe a little bit more visible, you may want to use the down here you can see in the depot there's an operator called notes, and that does a very similar thing, where it actually appears as an operator in your flow, but it does the same kind of thing. It actually has notes in it. So let's say we type in a very simple note. So there we go. We've got a little note that we're going to pass on to somebody else at our facility. We press OK, and you can see that when we did that, a little red triangle has appeared here, and that indicates that you've got a note. And when you click on it, it brings up the window with a note in it. Or you can type in, you know, any more information you want to, or just read it. And you can OK it when you finish with it. We'll select an operator, and we'll do comment again. This Operator.